Texas Math Mundo audience, are we in store for a treat today? In the house, the 1970 Texas UIL state number sense champion from Midland Lee High School, Mr. Randy Prude, in the house with a fascinating perspective on his UIL journey back in the day. Let me take a quick moment and ask that if you enjoy this content, that you please hit the subscription button and the notification bell, that you leave a comment below, and that you smash that like button. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. Let's spread this joy, let's spread this beauty to as many people as possible. Mr. Randy Prude, 1970 Class 4A state champion in number sense from Midland Lee High School. Right ahead. My name is Saul Cantu, and this is Texas Math Mundo. Texas Math Mundo audience, are we in store for a treat today? In the house is the 1970 Texas UIL Class 4A number sense state champion, Mr. Randy Prude, in the house from Midland Lee High School. How you doing, Mr. Randy Prude?
Doing good, Saul. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I have a question for you. Two questions. One, what's
Sure.
the mascot of Midland Lee?
Well, it's the Rebel,
Ooh, the Rebel, really? Wow.
in which, as you might know, with all the political things that have happened in the last 10 years, our high school changed its name. So I no longer have a alma mater anymore. It's gone. It's gone. They rechanged it to Legacy High School.
So the old Midland Lee is now Legacy High School.
Yes, sir. They kept the Rebel as a mascot. They kind of got away with it based on kind of a civil, our war back of the independence rather than the war of the states.
Wow. Okay, I got it. So now it's like the American Rebels.
Yes, there you go.
I got you. The Patriots or something. Yeah, I got you. Interesting. I didn't know that. I did not know that. Interesting. Also, was Class 4A the largest classification in those days?
That's a great question, and yes, it was. It was the same as any large high school in Texas. 4A was the ultimate high school in terms of size. 3A was the one next down to it. I mentioned that because that's actually the people that got me interested in math or in the slide rule and number sense was some people from Andrews, Texas, who were 3A, and they were always the state champions. In fact, they could probably beat all of the 4A champions in the years that I participated if they had been moved up.
I saw that in the records. Andrews High School pops up quite a bit in the historical records.
Yes, as a matter of fact, Andrews is the two teachers there, Don Bowles and Aaron McCracken, were the math teachers. And Aaron McCracken moved to Midland in about 67, 66 or so, and then started the math program in Midland from what he had learned from Don Bowles there in Andrews.
Wow, and that transferred on to you when you were a student there.
That's right, ninth grade.
Awesome. Hey, there's been a little bit of time since now and then, but I'm very fascinated by your perspective. I can't wait to hear about all of it. But let me ask first, how are you doing and what are you up to nowadays? What's keeping you busy?
Well, from college on, I became an entrepreneur. I started out my career as a petroleum engineer with Exxon. I quickly learned that I don't really enjoy working for other people. So I started my own company in 1980 and have been starting companies, oil and gas mainly, but real estate, commercial. I built a bungee tower in San Diego. I've done I've gone down to Houston to learn how to do a monogram machine and opened up a monogram machine in the Lubbock Mall. So do a little bit of everything. In the midst of all that, I ran for office and enjoyed that for 24 years as a county commissioner. So currently, I'm just enjoying semi-retirement, but I come to the office every day because I own my own building, and it's peaceful and quiet here, like it is this afternoon. I'm the only one in my office, so anyway, I continue to do investments and build companies, especially those that can help young people have a good career and a good paying job, and that's really what I really enjoy doing a lot today.
Wow, that must be so fulfilling. So, what is your current venture?
Well, I'm helping to build America's first and only green refinery to process cobalt and nickel, both of which are used in everything from EV cars to jet engines, and every kind of alloy that America makes almost needs nickel or cobalt or lithium or something like that. And so we've been dependent on China, and currently we're trying to build one in America where we no longer have to depend on somebody who may or may not be a partner, at any given time.
Fascinating. Wow, that's so fascinating. Some good stuff. We could go forever on just that, probably.
It is interesting. A young lady that leads the company, I'm really proud of her. She got this. It's a patriotic thing for her to want to make America not dependent on a possible enemy. And so she's put together an interesting group of people. And now people from all over the country and the world are courting her to want to get to know her and do business with us. I'm real proud of her. She's very entrepreneurial, and her name is Kaylee Long. She's from Oklahoma, and she has a ranch right next to Reed Drummond, who is Pioneer Woman.
Wow. Great stuff. So where are you from, born and raised, and what's your cultural heritage?
Well, I was actually, my parents came to Midland, Texas after they graduated from Abilene Christian College. At the time, it's Abilene Christian University now. They graduated in the 40s. My daddy went off to war, came back, they got married, and moved to Midland, Texas, which is where they were working. And then my daddy got transferred in 1952, early in 1952. I was born in February of 52 in Wichita, Kansas. I've never been there. I don't know anything about Wichita, Kansas, because they moved back to Midland 3 months later because of my asthma and the humidity there. And then they started their careers and worked in companies in Midland. So I've been in Midland all my life. Went off to college in 1970 after I graduated from Lee, and went to A&M and Texas Tech. And then of all the things, Exxon wanted to hire me, and they said, "Where do you want to go?" And I said, "Any place but Midland." And sure enough, they put me in Midland, which actually turned out to be a real blessing. So I've been in Midland all my life.
Wow, West Texas, molded by the West Texas sun.
It's a place where they say, if you want to come here or recruit somebody to come to work in Midland, be sure you bring their wives in at night where they can't see the surrounding scene, the desert. And but everybody that came to Midland once they were transferred here loved it because the people are so great. You can walk anywhere, be anywhere relatively safely, and then everybody's a friend. You can talk to anybody you want to on an elevator or the street and become new friends. And so it's a great place. The people are just wonderful here.
Awesome. You paint a great picture. When did you realize that you were talented in mathematics?
Well, that's a really interesting question. If you don't mind, I'll take about a minute to develop it, if that's okay. So in 1956, I was born in 52. In 1956 or 57 is when America first had its first kindergartens. And that was a new thing. And then our church started a kindergarten for all the kids that went to our church. We had 1,000 people and, 20 or 30 5-year-olds. And so they started a kindergarten. So I go over there to kindergarten, and every day I end up having to put a dunce cap on and sitting in the corner with a stupid cap on for punishment. And so I figured that I was bad or stupid or something. I don't know what. And it carried over to the first grade. In first grade, I go to public school. I finished first grade. I'm walking home after school, and I'm crying. And my mama comes out and said, and I don't remember ever crying in front of, but I'm crying. And my mom says, "Randy, what's the matter?" I said, "Well, I must be stupid again. I failed first grade." And she said, "What do you mean you failed? You had straight A's. In fact, do you remember when they took you up to the third grade and you beat everybody in the third grade in spelling?" I said, "Well, yeah, but what does that have to do with anything?" And so she said, you're actually not stupid, Randy. And then she explained to me, I had finished all my work in kindergarten, like in 3 minutes, and I was bored and had nothing else to challenge me. And so I think I would talk or play and get in trouble. So my teacher didn't know what to do with a student like that. So from then on, I figured, you know what? I'm just going to be really competitive and win everything I can win academically and sports and everything else. So I think it was in the second grade when I finally figured out that I can do stuff. And then by the time I got to fourth grade, I was a little bit obnoxious to my teachers because I kept making hundreds on my tests, and I asked her to make the test harder. Well, you can imagine how popular that made me with my classmates. So I would say somewhere between the second and fourth grade, I realized that I loved math and could do well at it.
Awesome. And what was your introduction to competitive mathematics, the number sense and slide rule and all that?
Yeah, good question. So in the ninth grade, Midland was one of the towns that had a ninth grade separate from all the other grades. And so I was in the ninth grade, and this teacher from my math teacher was from Andrews, Texas, and he had been schooled and trained by Don Bowles. Don is a wonderful scholarly professor type of a guy. And Andrews had been having competitive math and science and everything for years. Midland had never started the program until Aaron McCracken moved to Midland in about 67. And that's when he came to me and said, Randy, you're our top math student. Would you like to do number sense and slide rule? And sure, whatever. And I'm game to learn. I love learning. I just absolutely, even to this day, I love learning everything and anything. I just like a sponge. So he gave me some tests, some slide rule tests and some number sense tests, and then started teaching classes after school about how to do the tricks, how the number sense tricks and things. And I just thought that was wonderful because everything you had to do in your head, and that was just right up my alley. And so I started entering contests and going to all the different places everywhere from within about 200 or 300 miles from West Texas, and competing in. I think I came in first place in every contest I went to, as long as the 3A schools weren't competing against me. Yes, sir. Andrews could beat everybody in everything in math. I was always very impressed with Mr. Bowles and what he had done there.
Yeah, and that's reflected in the historical record. You see a lot of Andrews in the early 70s. They were really a powerhouse.
Yes, as a matter of fact, if you would take a look at their test scores, because we all took the same test, whether you're a 1A or B, 2, 3, 4, and 4A, which was the top school at the time, the tests were the same. And if you look at Andrew's scores on the literal test, I think you'd find that they beat everybody.
Wow.
In all categories.
So
which is really, so I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's really something neat about math is that you don't have to have any particular pedigree. I mean, if you're gifted in the ability to do math, I mean, you can be from nowhere or the largest city in the world. And absolute is absolute. I love that about math. There's not opinions. It's not wokeness or anything else. It's facts.
A true meritocracy, and that's what I love about Texas UIL. Texas UIL, they come from, parts of the state you wouldn't even think about, but they're brilliant mathematically.
Yes, it's exactly right. It's like that young girl in Queen's Gambit. A girl who had been abandoned and had a hard life and had a very unusual personality. But in her case, it was chess, but still, that's so mathematical and strategic. And so, yeah, math is absolutely wonderful. And all those math nerds that are listening to this podcast know what I'm talking about. I mean, math is just is cool.
Absolutely. What was Midland Lee High School like in 1970? What do you remember from those years?
Well, I'll tell you something interesting. In West Texas, it's like every little town in America, probably. And I will say something interesting. Up until my 10th grade, I had never met another person from another race. So culturally, Midland was, 80 or 90% Caucasian, 5 or 10% or 5% Hispanic and 5% Black. And I'd never met anybody, good or bad. And in my household I grew up in, we were typical West Texas family, we didn't talk about, we didn't know anybody from any other races. So it wasn't that you had a pro or a con feeling. It's just that in my family, I was taught to value everybody and to make sure that you are somebody's friend, especially the guy and the girl that don't have a friend. I mean, look out for them. So in 1967, the most unusual thing that happened in my high school career was Midland integrated. Well, I didn't even know what that meant. I just know that all of a sudden there was a few black kids in my classes, and I made friends with them just like I did to everybody else. And I found out later that was unusual to them. At our 20th and 30th reunion, the black guys and girls would come up to me and say, Randy, you were special to me in high school. And I say, I didn't know that. I know what you mean. He said, you always treated us like we were human beings. And without even, it wasn't you were trying too hard or trying too little. And so in my high school career, I think the most interesting thing that you might talk about is being integrated. And in Midland, Texas, in my opinion, it was a great success. It opened up so many doors for people of other races. And it opened up my mind to understand that not everybody had privileges in terms of, I didn't consider that I had any privileges. I grew up very poor. And but I later found out when you talk to some friends of other races that they can give you stories that just make you want to cry, of people being mistreated or not given an opportunity. And the anti-bully in me just raged up. I hate it when people treat people poorly or bully people or belittle people or haughty or prideful. So to answer your question, that was maybe one of the most significant events that happened. And then other than that, America was, we were like any other small town in America as far as I could tell.
I'm so glad you mentioned this. It's a different time, a different era. And I think a lot of today's students may not understand just how different the world was in those days. And
I'm sure that's right. Yeah, I'm sure that's right. And plus, knowing what I know about today, everybody in our schools were patriotic. They were mostly conservative values. Midland has always been a very conservative place, but yet, in my opinion, quite kind to people of every kind of walk, every walk. That's how I view Midland is we take care of each other and we don't hold things against each other because you think differently or look differently. And that may not be everybody's experience, but at least that's been my experience.
Awesome stuff. So was there a cohesive team or were you working mostly solo with Mr. McCracken? Did you go to many tournaments?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there was only 3 or 4 people that were interested in doing that. And I mostly did everything solo. All my tests I took home and did them in the evening while I was listening to music. By the way, that was the sexual revolution, hippies, the Beatles, Elvis, all the music that came about was quite different. Anti-Vietnam War was extremely prevalent. We were very angry that our government would fight a war for money. Both sides were playing. Our generation hated that. And so, but anyway, back to the deal. Everything I did was solo. But we went to lots of tournaments. Mr. McCracken took us. And then later, my calculus teacher in high school, Mr. Davenport, would take us to tournaments, kind of reluctantly, though, because he was more of a jet setter and drove a Porsche. He was the only teacher in school that was considered really, really cool. And but he did it because he was the math teacher, and he was stuck with me. And we were sort of friends. I think we were friends. We were friends after school and after college, but so I would go to all the local contests on Saturdays, and it was fun. I enjoyed everywhere from Quanah, Texas, which is near the Red River, to Austin, San Angelo, Lubbock, places in between. And I tell you something funny about that. So later on in years, after I was in college, I met a girl named Cindy Avery, who I think was from the Snyder area. I can't remember for sure. And she went to the same church I was going to there in Lubbock at Texas Tech. And she said, Randy, I know you from your slide rule days. I said, really? You wouldn't think of a math nerd having any kind of popularity. But she said, yeah, we would all groan when we saw you walk in a room because we knew we weren't going to win anything. And I felt bad because I didn't, I mean, but that's kind of funny. You know, that's hilarious to think you had a reputation when you walked in a room as a math nerd.
I love it. And that's what this channel tries to accomplish. The real cool kids are the math nerds.
Well, you know, that's, yeah, who knows?
Interesting. So this is your chance to do a chat. You already talked about Mr. McCracken, Mr. Davenport. Any other shout outs you want to do? Any teammates, any teachers? Good opportunity to make a shout out.
Well, those were the only teachers involved. I will say that my best friend, one of my best friends in high school was a guy named David Wagner. And he worked a circular slide rule. Most of our slide rules were the plastic kind like this. And eventually I went ahead and got the metal K&E slide rule. The metal slides real easy, and it really matters in a slide rule contest how quickly you can go backwards and forwards and stop on the dime with your cursor. The plastic ones that everybody had that was so cheap will swell on you, and it's like, you know, I mean, it's real hard to move. So I used them. I graduated to the metal immediately because it was the best slide rule available. And then my friend David Wagner worked a circular slide rule that we called a clatter platter. I don't know if you've ever even seen a circular slide rule, but it was about 8 or 9 inches in diameter and had 2 cursors, and you just swung it back and forth. And every time you let go of the cursor, it made a whapping sound. So we called them the clatter platters. So my best friend, David Wagner, worked the clatter platter, and then we became roommates in college as a result of our friendship that we made through math at Texas A&M. Texas A&M was the year I went there. There were no girls, so I didn't last very long. I really didn't enjoy not being able to date. So I transferred back to Tech. Anyway, I would give a shout out to David, but my best friend David died about 8 years ago or 10 years ago from liver cancer. And I didn't know it when it happened. His wife didn't know me. He didn't leave any instructions. And so he passed, and I had 2 or 3 emails I had sent to him that were never returned. And she finally must have found them 2 or 3 years later and told me. And it was so sad. So David, if you're watching up there in heaven, I love you, buddy. I miss you too. So anyway, thanks for giving me a chance to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for saying it and sharing those stories. I love these stories. They're gold. I love it all. Wow. So how do you become a state champion? What were your study habits?
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, I never really did study very much. I had a pretty photographic memory, and so things I heard or watched stuck with me real easily. And so I read a lot. I sponged up everything I could sponge up. But so my grades were very easy for me to make, and I usually made people mad because I would mess up the curve in all my classes, and I don't blame them for getting mad. I wouldn't like that either if I was there. But anyway, so I would go home at night, and during the times we were having contests, I would work maybe an hour or 2 or 3 on my slide rule and my number sense, take tests, practice tests at home, and I'd be sitting there listening to music and grooving out, and my 3 little brothers would leave me alone, you know, and I'd take a couple of tests. And so I really did practice quite hard for slide rule. Number sense, not so much. It just was, in fact, I never entered a number sense contest until my senior year at the state meet, and I won it. And so I realized I'd missed out on something important, because slide rule, as you know, the skills went away almost in about 1969 or 70 is when the first SR, whatever it was called, 70s or whatever the number was, the handheld calculators, when computers first came out. Yeah. So in 1970, my calculus teacher would say, he would get the class to try to use the calculators, but then I would say, I don't want to use a calculator. I'd rather use my slide rule. And everybody would laugh, and then Mr. Davenport would say, okay, class, we're going to have a contest, and you're going to use your calculator, and Prude's going to use his slide rule, and I would beat him.
Oh, really?
Very, very much. And so anyway, that's what was happening. Slide rule was passing away. Number sense, I will say, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I've used number sense for the rest of my life to great advantage. and number sense, winning the state contest the year I entered, gave me there were scholarships available in those days, and that's the only one I had access to, because being a national merit finalist like I was, everybody who had a daddy in the oil company got a full scholarship anywhere they wanted to go. I got zipped because my daddy worked as an accountant for a little tiny service company, and so the state, first place in the state, gave you a scholarship anywhere you wanted to go, full room and board and tuition and books for 4 years.
Wow.
So that was what I owe so much to Mr. McCracken and Mr. Davenport and learning how to do number sense. And I've used it all my life since then. There's not a time when I'm not sitting in an audience that some speaker will make some mathematical reference to something, world population, overpopulation, or this country has this gross domestic product in America. And they'll say something, and I'll do a quick calculation and realize the guy's, he's off by a factor of 10 or whatever. And then I can choose to go up and talk to him after the meeting or whatever. But I've used number sense my entire life to great advantage to understand what's going on in the world and make decisions based on fact rather than on opinions or moods or personalities.
Well, I have a question. Do the people around you, your friends, your family, do they know you were state champion in number sense?
Well, not too much. No. The answer is no. It's not something that was publicized. I mean, I had to. I think it turns out I had to give my state medal, first place, to the school to put in their display case. And so I don't know if I still have my medal, but really? I went in my 50th reunion 3 years ago and asked them if I could have it back, because I don't know where it is. It may be in my house, in my attic. I don't really know where it is. But they said, no, we got rid of all that stuff, 30 years ago.
Oh,
so
tragic.
If you're watching this thing and you're a state champion or anything, and you have to put your trophy or your medal in a display case, be sure when you graduate and go get it, because no one's going to ever care that watches, or the fellow students after you aren't going to look at your name and say, oh man, that's really neat. I remember so-and-so. Anyway, a little tidbit there. I wish I had it. I think I gave it away to the school and it got lost in the dustbin.
The state meet nowadays, I think, is a pretty grand affair. How was a state meet back in those days?
Well, again, I'll refer back to the Queen's Gambit. If you watch that movie, and the little girl there, as she progressed up the chain of beating people, she eventually got to some, a national tournament of some sort, and used to walk in this old musty room like in a college university somewhere, and there's 40 tables and all these clocks and everything. For slide rule, it's similar. We were in a hall there, some kind of a math hall at University of Texas in Austin. And I don't remember exactly which building it was, but there was all this accoutrements around you that were just, they're books and math equations and blackboards and then maybe 100 tables. And I can't remember, there was 100 of us or 200 of us, and we would come all during the day because there was like 1,000 kids from class B up to class 4A. And each one would have their hour and take their test. And then you'd had to wait around. We were the last ones. Class 4A was the last ones to take their test. And then afterwards, we're all in this great big hall together, and they start calling out and posting names. And it's kind of exciting, when you saw a friend do something or whatever. And then a lot of people would pat you on the back because they that's amazing. You beat me. Congratulations. And it wasn't like football where math is math. It wasn't athletic. It was mental. And that's a different kind of a person, right? That enjoys that. Absolutely. And but anyway, it wasn't any big deal. I got my name and a picture in the paper on Monday, and that's it. Got a cutting, and people like my mama knew, and she would tell all of her friends. My daddy would tell all of his friends, and then the school knew me. They in fact, I was elected Mr. Academic from Lee High School in 1970, which is done by your student body from the sophomores to the seniors. So I was known as the Mr. Academic Whiz Kid, and in fact, on our senior play, you got to do whatever you wanted to. And so I was tired of, first of all, I had the last name Prude. And if your young people don't know what that name means, it means very sexually repressed and not very amorous and everything. And I was kind of tired of that. Being a young high school guy, I enjoyed wanting dating and so forth. And I wanted girls to like me. So having the last name and then having a slide rule together was kind of a double whammy. So, and I had flaming red hair and freckles. And so in my senior year, to make fun of myself, we had a senior play, and I got to have a big old the slide rule from our class, from our math class, and it's like 2 feet tall by 8 feet long. So I was sitting there on the stage, and I said, what I want to have happen is I want the two most sexiest girls with the shortest mini skirts and the slinkiest walks to walk out on the stage and come start flirting with me and sitting beside me and, kind of wanting to make out and everything. And then then my line would be, well, you don't have to be a prude to be a slide rule champion. And so anyway, that may not make any sense to anybody who doesn't have those memories, but that was fun.
My kids don't even know what a slide rule is anymore. But
no.
I found in the storage room, go to an old high school, Pasadena High School. In the old storage room, I found that 2 foot by 8 foot slide rule demonstration one.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
I keep it in my classroom just as an oddity.
Yeah, it's gone the way of the dinosaur, with computers.
The buggy whip, yeah.
But the slide rule still has, NASA engineers use the slide rule to launch people to the moon.
Absolutely.
I mean, they use the slide rule, and it's quite a fascinating story what you can do with it. And also, if people are out there don't know what a slide rule is, the slide rule doesn't give you an exact answer to anything. It gives you plus or minus 2%, which you might say, well, what good is that? Well, it was back in the day, plus or minus 2% for a really complex, long problem was way enough accurate to get the job done of whatever you needed to get done. So that might be shocking to some people who want to have an exact answer.
Yeah.
Slide rule is plus or minus 2%. And on a slide rule test, if the answer was, and you used exponential notation too. So the answer might be 6.74 times 10 to the 13th power. Well, 6.74 could be 6.72 to 6.76, and you still got the answer correct.
Oh.
Which you might find interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. The slide rule test became the calculator test in the 80s.
Oh.
So it's a descendant. Today's calculator application is a descendant of slide rule, and you're allowed plus or minus 1 digit on the third significant digit now.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that is similar. Now, number sense, on the other hand, is you had to have the exact number. It had to be the exact number. You could not erase any. I don't know if you still do this today, but you could not make any erasures. If you slipped up and wrote, if your answer was 105 and you wrote 102, you can't erase it. Go back. You're wrong. You made a mistake. So not only did you have to be accurate and mental, you had to be exact. The way you thought, and execute with eye-to-hand coordination. Everything had to be exact, and then whoever got the most on a 70 test, 70 question test, it's right or wrong, and the guy who got the most right won first place.
And that was you in 1970.
That's kind of amazing to think about. I haven't talked about this in a long time. So I'm kind of loving talking to a bunch of guys and girls that like math.
It's a big deal. You were number one in the state of Texas. That's a big state. It's not a Mickey Mouse thing. This is a big deal. That's why I'm talking to you.
It really was a big deal. And to this very day, I'm really proud of it. Because as life goes on and you have, you deal with the loss of people or the loss or cancer or different things that really, really matter. It's something you can never take away from somebody is an achievement like this from a state meet. And if a young man or woman is watching this right now and wants to compete, I'm telling you, here I am. I'm 71 now. It gave me a full ride on a college scholarship. I use it almost daily in my life. And so, man, if you can master number sense, I really recommend it. It's way more important than so many things you might think of, and you'll use it the rest of your life.
So I do want to ask, what do you value the most about your UIL journey?
I think it's you can have opinions and talk and not ever perform in your life and not really do anything that matters. Winning a contest in math is not the same as loving somebody or being loved, but it's something that's real. It changes the way you think in terms of, the Bible says one man's story sounds good until you hear the other side. And one thing math makes you want to know the facts of an issue and make a decision based on reality rather than a fictitious reality or your own reality. There is no such thing, in my opinion, as your own reality. I mean, if you go along life thinking you're a tree and you're not, I mean, and getting people to call you Mr. Elm, that's not a world I want to live in. Math is absolute. I love it. And I would say the journey is I met so many people that you have an instant bond with because you have a love of something that's common. And so whether you end up playing sports or taking up a different occupation, I think it was good training for being a social person because math is typically an individual thing. It's nerdy. It's it's not necessarily a thing that creates friendships, but the UIL competition allowed you to do both. Be a competitor, use math, do something that was right and honorable, but then rub shoulders with a whole lot of other people from all walks of life, that some of which would become your friends for life. And so anyway, that's one of the joys of math, in my opinion, is getting to meet people and then taking the time to hear their story. And I just highly recommend that career is to don't let math be everything, but use it as a tool to do the things that are really important, which is people.
Yeah. So
to meet people.
So would that be your advice to today's youth? Well, state champion, 1970 state champion. You've got some perspective, you got some maturity, you got some distance. Well, what advice do you give today's youth?
I will say, and this may not, this has nothing to do with a slide rule or number sense, but I've learned this wherever I go in the world, whether I travel overseas or whether I'm here in Midland, Texas, or anywhere in the nation. You take the time to listen to another person's story and ask them about themselves. It's almost, I wouldn't call it a trick, but if you take the time to get to know somebody and ask them about their story and then do follow-up questions, I found that almost everybody will then consider you a friend. And you can never have too many friends. You can never have too many. So things bounce back to you. I'll use it in a mathematical equation. You spread the bread, like Jesus said, cast your bread upon the waters and it won't come back to you void. The meaning you give away stuff that matters, do stuff for people that without asking for anything or expecting anything, but it always comes back to you if you're kind to people. And that's my number one kind of advice, is to be a friend to everybody, especially the nerd, and which we all were to some degree. But watch for the person who's by themselves. Watch for the person who doesn't have friends, who isn't popular, and be their friend. And you'll never know what that'll return to you from a selfish point of view. Being kind to somebody else always yields good results.
Great message. Great message. Awesome. So, what does the future have in store for you, Mr. Randy Prude, 1970 state champion?
Well, I've never stopped wanting to achieve, and I was always very competitive. You have to moderate that because that also leads to personal conflicts with people. If you're trying to be the best or trying to win something, there's always a balance there that you have to. But I right now, I thought as I hit the age of 71, I thought, well, maybe it's time to slow down or quit doing things. But actually, I'm working on the biggest deals I've ever worked on in my life in terms of and using math and what I call back of the envelope type math. I'm helping to build a America's first green refinery in Lawton, Oklahoma, to refine cobalt and nickel, which is used in everything from electric cars to batteries to jet engines, and we're working to do that. I'm deeply involved in that. I'm on the board of West Wind Elements. It's an amazing company, just getting launched. I've got some other companies here in Midland that are into compression. And as you might know, every time you drill an oil or gas well in Midland, Texas, is the headquarters, you have gas that comes out of the ground in addition to the oil. And a lot of times the gas used to be vented, which is quite unpopular or not necessarily environmentally friendly. So today there's a very strong need for compression, which is where you take the vents off of a tank or off of a pipeline, and you put it back in a pipeline and sell it and use it for people's good rather than putting it in the atmosphere. So another company or two I'm working on are really strong in the area of compressing gas out here in West Texas. And as you may know, West Texas has become the #1 oil producer in the world and has literally led to America's independence from the Middle East, which is an incredible advantage. And I will say this for the people listening that might not know, oil and gas is the greenest form of energy there is in the world. Everything else you make, whether it's a windmill or a solar panel or anything else, takes way more petroleum products to make it than it ever generates in terms of energy. That may not be a popular statement, but I'll also say this: CO2 is plant food. I mean, carbon dioxide, the more you have of it, the more your temperatures go up in the world. Literally has reclaimed hundreds of millions of acres of farmland that are north of the typical growing season. So I have a very different viewpoint about this, the crisis. Weather does change, climate does change, but cheap oil and gas, cheap energy has lifted almost a half of the world's population out of dire poverty into being able to eat. And that's way more important to me than any theoretical crisis. Again, I know that may not be a popular statement, but I will tell you, in my opinion, oil and gas is the best thing that's ever happened to mankind. And plants need CO2. And yeah. So now, do you need to be clean? Absolutely. And that's one of my latest companies is helping to make sure we have the cleanest air possible.
Okay. Looks like you have some fascinating stuff in front of you, some fascinating endeavors in front of you. Awesome.
I'm enjoying it.
Awesome. Any parting words or final thoughts as we conclude this interview?
No, I'm just thrilled that somebody would remember something that happened 53 years ago, and it really changed my life. I'm hopeful that the young men and women who watch this video today would take it as a challenge to really get into whatever they're doing, whether it's math or something else, but really become good at it. The Bible says if you will become excellent at whatever you do, you will end up in front of kings and queens and presidents. You develop your skills, be the best you can be, spend the time it takes, put down the video game unless the video game is making you a living, get to know people, become excellent at something, and you never know where it will lead you.
Great parting thoughts. You know, I have to thank Mr. Larry White because he created that chronology, and without that chronology, I would never come across your name. But there's your name in the archives, and I want to thank you for giving a face to that name. No longer is it just 1970 Randy Prude. No, now we know who you are. We get the story behind that line in the archives, and I can't thank you enough.
It's been my honor to get to talk about this, but mainly to get to make a new friend. And if I get to make a friend with any of these young people that are watching this too in the future, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'm going to share that Discord link with you so you can be in contact with this community. It's a pretty vibrant community in our Discord, so I think you'll enjoy that. And you have made a friend. If you're ever in the Houston area, please think of me, and let's go have some barbecue or some taqueria food, whatever you make the call, and I'd have a pleasure talking to you.
I love it. I love everything mom and pop. So we'll find a mom and pop place to go to and eat some good food together.
Absolutely. Mr. Randy Prude, 1970 state champion number sets. I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate you. And farewell, my friend. Farewell.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Saul.
Wow, what an incredible conversation with Mr. Randy Prude, the 1970 state champion in number sense from Midland Lee High School. What a fascinating perspective. Thank you very much, Mr. Randy Prude, for sharing that wonderful insight and wisdom and story with us. I really appreciate it. Let me take a quick moment and ask that if you enjoy this content, could you please hit the subscription button and the notification bell, that you leave a comment below, and if you smash that like button. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. Let's spread this joy, let's spread this beauty to as many people as possible. I got plenty of wonderful things in store for this channel, and I truly appreciate your support. My name is Saud Kamdu, and this is Texas Math Mundo. Farewell, farewell.